everyone. We are continuing our Libud of Sefer Yirmiyahu. We're up to Perek Nun Aleph. As is often the case, the division of prakim does not really correspond to the thematic division of the book. The prakim are of non-Jewish origin in any case, and we had just finished a long perek of 46 psukim about a nevuah, about the downfall of Bavel at the hands of Persia. And the emes is, Perek Nun Aleph is even a longer continuation of that nevuah. It goes for 64 psukim. So you have over 100 psukim dealing with this. And again, I will confess that I do have a certain inability to fully understand the reiteration and the apparent redundancy and repetition of making the same point over and over and over again about the great devastation and humiliation that shall happen to Bavel as a nekama of Hashem for their destruction of the Beis Hamikdash and for the galus and the murder that they exacted against Am Yisrael. And the Navi goes over it many, many different times. And it's hard for us to really understand this. The simple idea might be that given the fact that this nekama is a comfort to Am Yisrael, when it comes to comforting somebody, you have to go over the idea again and again and again, because just because somebody hears it once and it's in their brain, doesn't yet mean it penetrates their heart. And I think I said this about the Shiva de Nechemta in Sefer Yeshayahu, and it might apply equally here. But be it as it may, it's still a mitzvah that if we had more time to go into it be'iyun, we would try to understand the need to reiterate what is fundamentally the same message so many times. But be it as this may, let's look at the words of the Navi and at least be inspired by their power, by their emotional impact, by their rhetorical effect. Pasuk Aleph, Ka Yamar Hashem. Now again, this is a continuation. This is not a new nevuah. This is a continuation of Perek Nun. Ka Yamar Hashem, Hineni Meir al Bavel, V'al Yeshvei Leiv Kamai, Ruach Mashchis. Behold, I am arousing against Bavel, V'el Yoshvei Leiv Kamai, and to the inhabitants who have the heart of those who rise against me, a divine spirit that will destroy them. Again, the idea here is that the Persians are human beings, and even if they have Avodah Zarah, but it is the Spirit of God that is giving them their power. Rashi points out from the Gemara itself that the unusual phrase, Leiv Kamai, the hearts of those who rise against me, actually has 5 letters. Leiv Kamai actually spells out the word kastim if you follow the system of atbash, right? Atbash means like a code. Atbash. The aleph equals taf, the bays equals shin, right? You draw up the aleph bays in its regular sequence, and then the aleph bays in a reverse sequence, and it's a way of substituting letters. So leiv kamai bi'atbash would spell kastim. V'shilachti leBavel zarim, and I will send to Bavel strange nation they've never encountered. V'zeirua, and like grain, they will scatter the Babylonians. Vayivakaku es arza, they will empty their lands. Ki hayu ala misaviv b'yayim ra'ah. They will be going against Babylonia on a very bad day for them, for Bavel. El yidrei chadayrech kashtei v'el yisal b'sir yainai, to the archer who is bending his bow, and to the warrior who is putting on his armor, Sir Yono, my message is, Al tachmalu el b'churah. Do not have mercy on the choice heroes of Bavel. Hacharimu kol tzva'ah. Destroy her army. V'naflu chalalim b'eretz kasdim. So that corpses will fall in the land of the kasdim. Umadu karim b'chutzosah. And they will be stuck with knives and swords in the streets. Now we have a very famous phrase, Ki loi alman Yisrael, v'Yehuda melekav. No matter how dark and desolate life seems for the Jewish people, even during Chorban, even during Golus, even during suffering, even during the Holocaust, even when it seems that the nations of the world that afflict us are dominant and prospering, the Jewish people are not widows. Yirmiyahu says, Haisa ka'almana. Yerushalayim was like a widow. This is an eicha, but not an almana mamish. The husband, Hashem, is still here, still loves us. Loi alman Yisrael. Now this phrase in modern times often refers to the idea that Hashem never leaves us without Gedolim, that even when we lose many Gedolim and Tzaddikim, as we've lost this year and other years, the Eibishter always gives us someone. But in the context of this pasuk, it's referring to HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. Ki artza mala Hashem. It's true that the land of Babylon is filled with sin, and therefore Hashem will take the vengeance of a husband protecting his wife. Pasuk Vav. Nasu mitaych Bavel umaltu ish nafsho. So now it's as if Hashem is speaking to the mercenaries in Bavel, who better get out of there to be safe. Run away from Bavel. Save your life. Al tidamu, do not be cut off because of her sin. Ki eis nekama hi lashem gemul hu mishalom la. It is a time of vengeance for God. He is paying back to Bavel what they've done. Kais zahav Bavel biyad Hashem. So here we're using a metaphor that often appears very often in the books of Tanakh, and that is, Hashem has a cup, and the cup which you drink from is filled with his wrath and anger and vengeance and midas adin and punishment. And this cup is fed to the goyim to drink from the cup of Hashem's anger and get drunken, so to speak, with suffering. So Hashem says, for so many years, Bavel was the golden cup that contained Hashem's anger that was fed to all the different nations, including Am Yisrael, that experienced that anger. Bavel was the vehicle that delivered that anger. But now, they're going to drink of their own cup. Right, that's what Pasuk Zayin uses as its imagery. Kos Zahav Bavel Biyad Hashem. Bavel was the golden cup in the hand of God of Hashem's anger. Mishakeres Kol Haaretz. It got everybody drunk. It fed the divine wrath and the midas adin to all of the nations of the world. Miyena, from its wine, this is the wine of anger. Shasu Goyim. And Al-Kain Yishaylalu Goyim. The Goyim became drunk and insane by their sufferings. And yet, now, that which was the cup that fed wrath and punishment and suffering to all of the world, now becomes the entity that experiences that suffering. Pisaim nafla Bavel. Bavel has fallen suddenly. Vatishaver, and it's gotten broken. Hey lilo aleh. Cry for Bavel. Kechut sari lamachava. Bring balm. Like balm is like ointment from trees. Lamachava, for its pain. Ulai teirape. Perhaps Bavel, again sarcastically, perhaps Bavel can be healed by the balm and the ointments that you get from trees. And then the doctors say back, again this is a poetic, metaphoric expression, Ripino es Bavel, we tried to heal the pain of Bavel, v'lo nir pasa, she did not get better. Izvua, let us abandon her, right, all of the mercenaries. V'neilech ish li artzo, and we will go back home. Ki nogel shamayim mishpata, because the judgment against Bavel reaches the very heavens. It is so deep, it is so strong. It's as if the midas hadin, of course it comes from heaven, but it like goes up to the heavens, all the way to the Shamayim. V'nisat shechakim. Haitzi Hashem es sitkoseinu. So now the Navi is speaking in terms of the Jewish people. God has found our righteousness, our zechuyos, our merits, our tshuva. Bo nesapra b'tzion es maisa Hashem Elokeinu. Let us go, and let us return to Tzion, to Eretz Yisrael, to declare the kindness and the chesed of Hashem. Now again, l'maisa, in the short term, that did not happen. Only a minority of people returned. But liyasid lavai, there will be that kibbutz golias. Pasuk Yud Aleph. Haveru hachitzim milu hashalatim. Now, speaking to the enemies, Persia. Gather your arrows, fill your quivers. Quivers are the containers of the arrows. Heir Hashem es ruach malchei Madai. God has aroused the ruach of the kings of Media. Madai and Paras were two sister kingdoms. Sometimes we talk about Madai, sometimes Paras. Right, Achashverosh is the king of Madai and Paras. Ki al Bavel mizi masei la'ashchisa. It is God's plan to destroy Bavel. Ki nikmas Hashem hi nikmas eichalo. As we said before, the vengeance of God is the vengeance for the destruction of His Beis HaMikdash. So even though God decreed it, but it was Bavel's rishus that did it through their bechira, and for that they could be held accountable. Pasuk Yud Beis. El chomos Bavel sa'unes. Against the walls of Babylon, lift up your flags, your banners. Hachaziku hamishmor, strengthen your guards. Hakimu shaimrim, establish watchmen to be sure that the Babylonians don't escape. Hechinu ha'orvim, prepare ambushes, that if anyone does escape, they can be ambushed. Ki gam zamam Hashem gam asa, because God has planned and God has done. Of course, He didn't do it yet, but it's ki'ilu, it's already done because it's so certain. Eis asher dibrel yeshvei Bavel. Shochant al mayim rabim. You, Babylonia, dwell on top of ample, rich water sources. Rabas eitzarais, you're filled with treasures. But ba kitzeich amas bitzeich. But your end has come, the final measure of your thievery, bitzeich, and treachery. Nishba Hashem tzavakos benafsho. God swears by His very life. Ki milesich adam kayelek, v'yanu alayach hedad. That your city or your country will be filled with enemies like the locust, and they will call out, hooray, hooray, as they defeat you. Pasuk Tetzva, V'isa aretz b'kaychai, mechen tevel b'chachmasai, u'v'svunasai nata shamayim. This is a praise of Hashem. He makes the world with His strength. He prepares existence with His chachma. In His understanding, He makes shamayim. L'kail titay hamayim b'shamayim b'yal nisiyim exearis. This is a poetic description of rain. As God moves the clouds with make noise, this would be what we call thunder, moving of the clouds. And then the clouds gather water and lightning for rain. And He brings wind out of His chambers. Again, it's describing the greatness of Hashem as compared to the insignificance of man. Nivar kol adam midas. All human beings are foolish in not understanding the nature of Hashem and the might of Hashem. Hovish kol soref mipasel. Those who make idols are going to be humiliated because they will see that their avodah zarah did nothing for them. Ki sheker niskai. The one who poured the idol in a mold was engaged in sheker. V'lo ruach bam. There is no spirit of life in these idols. Hevel hema maset tatuim. They are hevel. They are vanity. They are futile. Maset tatuim. They are actions or deeds of foolishness. And b'yeis b'kudasam. And the time when God will remember the sins of Bavel, Yavedu, these gods will be destroyed along with the Babylonians. Loi cha'ela chelak Yaakov. But not like this is the portion given to the Jewish people. Now again, we were taka nichshol b'avodah zarah. But that wasn't the chelek we were given. The chelek that Hashem gave us was a connection to God. We have to choose whether we want that chelek or reject that chelek. But our chelek is Yetzer Kolu. We are the nation of the God who created everything. Shevet Nachalaso. We are the tribe that He keeps as His inheritance. Hashem Tzivakos Shemo. He is the Lord of hosts, the Lord of everything that's in creation. But He is our God. And in our God we trust that even the invincible Babylonian Empire can be crushed and defeated. Mafatz ata li. Again, a mafatz is also like a smasher, like a sledgehammer. You, now speaking about Bavel, again, going back to a theme. You had been, until now, that's how Rashi learns. The atah is going on Bavel. You had been the hammer that I used to smash all the other nations, including Eretz Yisrael. Mafetz atali klei milchama. You were my hammer. V'nipatzti b'cha goyim. Through you, Babylonia, I smashed the nations. V'eshchati b'cha mamlachos. And through you, I destroyed kingdoms. V'nipatzti b'cha sus v'rachbo. Through you, I smashed horse and rider. V'nipatzti b'cha rechav v'rechbo. And through you, I smashed chariots and their riders. V'nipatzti b'cha ish v'isha. Through you, Bavel, you were my kli. You were my weapon. Through you, I smashed ish v'isha, man and woman. But v'nipatzti b'cha, right, he repeats it over and over again. V'nipatzti b'cha nar v'zakein, zakein v'nar, old and young. V'nipatzti b'cha bachur b'sula, young man and young woman. V'nipatzti b'cha roya v'yadrai, shepherd and flock. V'nipatzti b'cha ikar v'tzimdai, the farmer and the pair of oxen by which he plows. V'nipatzti b'cha pachais uskanim. Through you I destroyed, I smashed. Pachot, officers, uskanim and their assistants. So you, don't think you ever had the power. This is the important lesson Bavel needs to understand. All that you did, you were just a hammer in my hand. You had no power. And anything you did was simply a hammer that I, Hashem, was wielding. Veshilamti. L'bavel l'chol yoshvei kastem es kol ra samachirasu b'tzion li'einechem, and I will pay back to Bavel all of the evil that they did in Sion against Eretz Yisrael, li'einechem, in front of your eyes. Your eyes meaning the Jewish people shall be aware of this. Hineni elecha hara mashchis. You, Babylon, are called a mountain of destruction. Behold, I'm now turning against you. Num Hashem hamashchis es kol haaretz, that I will destroy all of your land. V'natisi es yadi alacha, I will stretch forth my hand against you. V'yigalticha min hasalayim, I will roll you out from under the rocks. You're going to hide in the rocks from the Persians. I will roll you out and expose you. V'nesaticha lahar serefa, and you, who are a mountain of destruction, shall become a mountain of fire, being consumed by fire. People will not even be able to retrieve a stone for a foundation. There won't even be stones that will be available. Ki shimamais eilam tiyeh enum Hashem. You, the Babylonian Empire, will suffer eternal desolation. Su'u neis bioretz, again turning to the Persians. Lift up the banner. Tiku shofar bagoyim, blow the battle shofar among the nations. Kadshu ala goyim, sanctify, prepare the nations to go against Babel. Ashmiu ala mamlechais ararat, mini v'ashkenaz. Bring together, again joining Persia, the kingdoms of Ararat. That's Mount Ararat, where the Teva, after the Mabul rested, somewhere in Turkey. Mini Ashkenaz. Now Ashkenaz sometimes means Germany. It's hard to figure out exactly what that would mean in this context, but these were different Makaimais, apparently in proximity to Paras, although Germany is not in that proximity. So you need to know what this refers to. But basically the message is, gather the nations against Babel, Piktuala Tapsor, appoint a general. Halusus, bring your horses, Kayelek Samar, like swarms of locusts. Kadshuala Goyimus Mamchay Madai Vespachosaves Kosagana, and designate and prepare and sanctify, as it were. It's almost like it's holy work. The kings of Madai, V'eskol Eretz Memshalto, and all of his land. Vatira Sha'aretz Vatachol, and the earth shall tremble just from the noise of these huge armies. Ki kamal Bavel machshvos Hashem, because the thoughts of Hashem are against Bavel. Losam es Eretz Bavel l'shama mi'ein Yoshev. Chodlu gibari Bavel leilachem, the mighty ones of Bavel are going to stop from fighting. They will lose their ability to fight from fear. Yashvu b'matzados, they will dwell in towers, looking for protection. Nashasagavurasam, they will forget their strength. Hayulan Hashem, they will be like women who cannot fight. Hitzitzu mishkanaisa nishbru bricha, its dwelling places have been destroyed. Its bolts and its locks have been broken. Rutz likras rutz yarutzu magid likras magid lahagid lamelech Bavel ki nilkadei iroi mikatzeh. And as Bavel falls, and as the armies are defeated, and as the cities are conquered, and as the buildings are burnt, and as the soldiers are murdered, there'll be one shaliach after another shaliach, and one informer after another informer, to tell the king of Bavel that his city has been conquered. Now, I do have a kasha here, and I'm not sure exactly how to answer this, because Lamaisa, that's not the way things actually unfolded. The Navi is describing a scene where the Persian army invades Bavel, and then people have to tell the king, your nation has been conquered. In point of fact, in the book of Daniel, we are told, this is the famous handwriting on the wall, that Belshazzar, who had made a Seudah with the Kalim of the Beis HaMikdash, went to sleep and was murdered, and that's how Persia took over. Not that Persia was taking over and somebody then tells the king. The king was killed first, and that's how Persia was taken over. But it could be, basically, what maybe it's unrecorded in Nach, but maybe this is what yirmiyahu is referring to, that it's shaykh that after Belshazzar got killed, there still needed to be a military war, and Belshazzar may have had a temporary successor who's not even mentioned in Tanakh, and he is the king that we're talking about, because otherwise there's a bit of a tzarachian, because and I just leave it as a kasha, because the process that's being described here is not the process that actually unfolded. Pasuk Lamed Beis, V'hamabrot nitfasu. Mabrot are the bridges over water that you could escape when you're running away, and all of those bridges were seized by the Persians. V'yasa'agamim sarfu, and the different swamps which had water were burnt up, so there was no water for the Babylonians who were hiding. V'yanshiyam milchama nifhalu, and all of the soldiers were terrorized and confused and disoriented. Pasuk Lamed Gimel. Ki kai amar Hashem tzavakot Elokei Yisrael. So says Hashem, Bas Bavel kegayren. Bas Bavel will be like a threshing floor of grain. Eis hidricha, when it is stepped upon and trampled. Od ma'at uba eis hakotzer la. And it will only be a short time till it's time for their harvesting. So the concept would be that just like you harvest the grain, then you bring it to the threshing floor, and you pound it, and bang it, and jump on it, and trample it. So too Hashem is saying, using this metaphor, that Bavel's time to be harvested is coming, and then it will be brought to the Gairen, and will be trampled. Pasuk Lamed Dalet. Ochalani hamamani nevuchat retzar melech Bavel. So now we're switching back to the Jewish people. Ay v'avoy. Ochalani, he has eaten me, has consumed me. Hamamani, he has eaten me up. This Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Bavel. Hitzigani kli rik, he has made me like an empty vessel. He's taken everything out of me. My wealth, my health, my life, my optimism, my hope. Bialani kitanin, he has swallowed me like a snake swallows a mouse. Mile karese miadana, he has filled his stomach with my delicacies. Hadichani, he has pushed me away from life. This is what Am Yisrael is thinking. Chamasi ushe'eri al Bavel. And thus, Tarmi Yeshevet Sion. So Chamasi, my Hamas, meaning what he has stolen from me. What he has stolen from me, I now accuse Bavel. V'dami el Yoshvei Kastim Tarmi Yerushalayim. And Yerushalayim says to the Yoshvei Kastim, V'dami, may you be cut off. Pasuk Lamed Vav goes on, L'chein, Kayamar Hashem hinei rav es rivech. Behold, I am fighting your fight. I am standing up for you, Klal Yisrael. V'nikamti es nikmosech, I will take vengeance for you. V'acharavti es yama, I will dry up the water of Bavel. V'hovashti es makara, I will dry up the source of its strength. V'haisa Bavel galim miyon tanim, Bavel will become galim, rubble, the dwelling place of tanim, wild jackals, dogs. Shama ushareka, desolate, and people will simply whistle in astonishment. Mi'ein Yoshev, no one will live there. Yachdav kakfirim yeshagu, the Babylonians who will remain will be like young lions who don't know how to hunt yet, and their parents aren't there. They will roar in starvation. This is not a sign of strength. This is a sign of weakness and helplessness. Na'aro ki goyrei arayos. They will be like young lions who are unable to get food. Bechumam, at a time of warmth, oshis es mishteyem, I will let them have their party. So this Rashi says is a remes to Belshazzar, who made a party. He's Nebuchadnezzar's grandson. It's the book of Daniel. He made a party with the Kalim of the Beis Hamikdash, celebrating the Chorban. Through a miscalculation, he believed that the 70 years were up, and there'll be no Geula. And that's when there was the handwriting of the wall, and that very night he was killed by his own Avadim, and that's how Persia took over the Malchus. I will make them drunk at their parties, and through that process they will go to sleep, but they will sleep forever, meaning it's a pun. Yeah, Nebuchadnezzar went to sleep, but he slept forever because he was killed, and this will also be the beginning of the process that will destroy Babylonia forever. V'lo yakitzu no'am Hashem, they will not waken again. Oridaim kekarim litvoach, I will bring them down like karim, like sheep for the slaughter. Ke'elim imatudim, like rams together with goats, bringing them down to shecht. Eich nilkada sheshach vatitafes tehilas kol haaretz, and people will say, how is it possible for the mighty kingdom of Sheshach to be conquered? Again, this again going back to Atbash, just like Lev Kamai is Kastim, Biatbash, Sheshach is Bovel, Biatbash. You have to be ma'ayin. Why are these the only two places, both of them in the same parak, where Yirmiyahu uses the code words of Atbash to refer to Bavel? Now, some people want to give a teretz. Well, he has to speak in code because, after all, right now he's under Babylonian rule, and if he simply attacks Bavel directly, then he could be in trouble. But frankly, that teretz makes no sense at all, because Eino Chinami, there are two places where Bavel is referred to by code. One is Lev Kamai, and the other is Sheshach. But out of those two places, there's another 100 places where Yirmiyahu says very, very explicitly that he's talking about Bavel. So Avada, Yirmiyahu has no pachad at all about speaking about Bavel directly. But Mem Aleph says, people will say in amazement, how could Sheshach, i.e. Bavel, how could Bavel be conquered? How could the praise of all of the earth be grabbed? How could Bavel, here it does say Bavel, Lashama, be desolate among all the nations? Allah, in other words, they're amazed. Allah al Bavel hayom kahamon galav. It's as if the sea overflows and sweeps Bavel away like a tsunami. Nichsasa, covered up by the waves of the sea. Its land is desolate. It is like a dry, parched desert wilderness. Eretz lo yeshav b'hem kol ish. No one can even live there. V'lo yavor b'hem kol ish. No one even walks by there. And again, ufakadeti al Baal b'Bavel. And Hashem says, and I will punish Baal. Baal is one of the gods of Bavel. V'otseisi es below mi piv. And all that Baal has swallowed up, meaning all that's been taken away from people, as if it's in the mouth of the idol. That's a metaphorical expression. I will take out of its mouth. V'lo yinharu elav odayim. And no longer will nations flow or move or immigrate to Bavel. Gam chaymas Bavel nafala. Its might, its wall, its power will fall. And once again, Hashem calls on the Jewish people that when Bavel finally falls, time to come back to Eretz Yisrael. Again, as I've said many times already, Litzarenu, this directive was not fully Makoyim, because only a minority of Yidden came back to Eretz Yisrael. But once again, the Navi B'Shem Hashem calls upon all of us to return. And as the Malbim writes, had more returned, this could have been Yemosa Mashiach Mamish. Tzu'u mitaycha ami, my nation, Am Yisrael, leave Bavel. Umaltu ish es nafsho, run for your own lives, mechara naf Hashem, get out of that place. So this doesn't only mean get out of that place because of the war. Get out of that place because Golus itself is injurious to your soul. Upen yeirach levavchem batiru bashmua nishmas bihoretz. Uba bashana hashmua v'achra bashana hashmua v'chamas bihoretz moshel al moshel. And lest you get afraid because you hear about the Persian Empire coming and destroying Babylon, and you're going to figure they're going to do the same thing in Eretz Yisrael, and therefore you're afraid because you say, how can we come back? Don't be afraid. Persia will give you rishus, and you will be able to come. When I punish the gods of Bavel, and all of its land shall be humiliated and ashamed. And all of its corpses will be killed. And heaven and earth will rejoice, rinenu, that the rishus of Bavel has been destroyed. Because from the north came the plunderers. And they will give you permission. Do not be afraid. Pasuk Memtes, Gam Bavel linpo chalalei Yisrael, Gam leBavel naflu chalalei kol haaretz. That in Bavel, they caused many Jews to die. In Bavel, many chalalei Yisrael died. Therefore, Gam lib Bavel naflu chalalei kol haaretz. The dead bodies of its whole land will die. It's kind of a midah keneged midah. Bavel was mapel chalalei Yisrael, so lib Bavel, their chalalim will fall. Poleitem mecherev hilchu al tamaydu. Zichru meirachayk es Hashem b'Yerushalayim tala alavavchem. But you Jews, you can escape from the sword. You can come back to Eretz Yisrael. Do not stand still. Remember from a distance, even though you're in Bavel and Eretz Yisrael is far away, but remember from a distance the God in Yerushalayim. And you should think of Yerushalayim always. Now again, this pasuk can apply to us as well. Zichru meirachayk es Hashem. Remember Hashem from a distance. V'Yerushalayim tala al levavchem. And Yerushalayim you should always bring up in your heart. V'ishnu ki shamanu cherpa kisach lima paneinu. We suffered shame and humiliation, kibo zarim al mikdashay beis Hashem, that the zarim, the strangers, came and destroyed the beis hamikdash. We suffered, but there's a chance to come back. How can you not come back when you're given that chance? Lachein hine yamim baim nom Hashem ufakadeti al pisilah. I will visit punishment on the gods of Bavel, and in all of the land, Yechanak Chalal, the Chalalim will scream out pains of agony. Now, l'chayra, they're not yet dead, but it means as they're dying, they will scream. Because no matter, even if Bavel could escape to the heaven, and could find the highest point of protection. I will bring plunderers. There is no escape. There will be a sound of screaming. That God will plunder Bavel, and He will take away its mighty voice. Bavel had a mighty voice in the world. He will take away that mighty voice. V'hamu galayim kamayim. There was a time that they had a kol gadol, and their waves were as big as the sea. But all of that is going to be taken away. Kiva al Bavel shoded, v'nilkadu giborah chitzar kashteisam. The shoded will come, the giborim will be conquered, its bows and arrows will be broken. Kikel Gemulot Hashem, because Hashem ultimately rewards and punishes based on what people do. Shalem Yishalem, He shall surely pay Bavel back for its evil. V'hishkarti sorev chachamah pachoseus ganav giboreha. I will make them drunk. They will drink the poisonous wine of God's wrath. I will make its officers and princes and chachamim drunk with suffering. V'yashnu shnas eilam, and they will sleep in eternal sleep. V'lo yakitzu, they will not wake up. Noam Hashem tzavakai shemai. These are the words of Hashem. And kai amar Hashem tzavakais. This is what Hashem says. Chomos Bavel harachava, the wide expanse wall of Bavel, a wide wall that stretches for such a distance. Arer tisarer shall be destroyed. Sharer hagvayim ba'esh, the tall, powerful gates, yitzatu, will be burnt with fire. Vayigu amim bidei rik, uliyomim bidei esh, vayoefu. And they will try to touch the nations with emptiness, and they will not be successful. Bidei rik, hands of emptiness. Ulamim bidei esh, and the other nations will get them with fire and destruction. Vaya efo, and Bavel will just be exhausted. Psychologically, they will not be able to fight. So this is already 58 psukim, together with the other perek, and that was one long nevuah about the downfall of Bavel. Now we have a later nevuah, which is the final nevuah of Bavel, and this was actually even before the Churban Beis HaMikdash. And Pasuk Nuntes says, Hadavor asher tziva Yirmiyahu Hanavi es Seraya ben Neriah ben Machseah Belechtai es Sidkiyahu melech Yehuda Bavel b'shnas haravias l'malchai u'Seraya sar menuchas. Remember that the last king of Yehuda before the Churban Beis HaMikdash is Sidkiyahu HaMelech. And Sidkiyahu HaMelech initially is under the rule of Nebuchadnezzar, and he's even bringing him tribute. Eventually, over the objection of Yirmiyahu, Sidkiyahu rebels against Nebuchadnezzar, and that precipitates the Churban and the Galus, and Sidkiyahu blinded and taken to Bavel. Now this was a nevuah in the earlier years of Sidkiyahu, the 4th year of his reign, in which he was actually bringing a tribute to Nebuchadnezzar through the hands of his servant Seraya, who is called Sar Menucha. So Menucha here does not mean rest, but it's the same meaning as Mincha. He was in charge of bringing gifts, tributes. And Yirmiyahu, although Yirmiyahu is against rebelling against Nebuchadnezzar, he does communicate that Bavel will eventually be destroyed. And Pasuk Samach says, Vayichtayv Yirmiyahu es kol hara'ah asher tavo el Bavel al sefer echad. Yirmiyahu wrote all of these long nevuahs against Bavel in one scroll. Es kol hadvarim ha'ela sheksuvim el Bavel. Vayomer Yirmiyahu el Seraya. Yirmiyahu said to Seraya, who was the officer bringing the tribute to Nebuchadnezzar, Kavayacha Bavel, when you come to Bavel, Vira Isa, and you see Yidden there, because remember, in the reign of Yehoiachin, the Choresh and the Masker, the Talmidei Chacham are already there, so you're going to have a Jewish audience. When you see the Yidden in Bavel, Vikarasa, Eis Kol Advorim Ha'ila, give them chizuk. Tell them this is not permanent. Bavel will eventually fall. V'yamarta, Hashem atadi barto makam hazel lachrisai, levilti heyospo yeshiv adavar behema, ki shimamais eilam tia. Say to them, Hashem spoke about Bavel to destroy it, and it will be eternally desolate. V'haya, and it will be, this is Yirmiyahu's instruction to Seraya, Ki chalaischa likrai es ha-sefer hazeh. After you read this, Sefer does not mean the book of Yirmiyahu, but it means the particular nevuah about the destruction of Bavel. Take the Sefer, even though it has Hashem's name in it, Tikshor olav Evan, tie a rock to it, Hishlachte, and throw the Sefer El Nahar El Toch Paras into the Euphrates River. And of course, the whole scroll, because of the weight of the stone, is going to sink. Via Marta. And you, Seraya, should declare, I'm not sure if this was in the presence of people or not, Kacha tishka Bavel v'lo yisakam. Just as this rock causes the scroll to sink to the bottom, so Bavel will sink to the bottom and will never arise again because of the evil that I am bringing upon them. Vayo'efu, and they will be exhausted, unable to do anything. And the end of this parak reads, Ad Hena Divrei Yirmiyahu. This is the end of the prophecies of Yirmiyahu. The last parak is not from Yirmiyahu. The last parak was added later by the Anshe Knesset Hagdola.